Good to go.
All right. Hey, veterinary friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. Today, I have an exciting guest, somebody that I've known for a lot of years. It's Dr. Jeff Rothstein. He is a DVM and an MBA, and he is a founder and co-president of Mission Veterinary Partners. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff. I'm really excited to have you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's been a long time coming, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a few years. I'm surprised I haven't had you on before this.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to join you here this morning. I think we're separated maybe by 40 or 50 miles, but we're certainly in this same state here in Michigan.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm so excited for you to share your veterinary story because you have a great one. You've done a lot of things in vet med.
Yeah,
So can you start with that? Kind of just
hopefully,
tell us your vet med story?
sure. Hopefully, it will be an interesting one with a few curves along the way here.
Yeah.
They're a long and winding road, and I think
Yeah, it's not typical, right?
Yeah. So as we were just talking, I came back from Colorado State in 1994, and I was doing these presentations, and I enjoyed being able to put up going back to my 25th class reunion in Fort Collins. And now that's a little outdated. So we're going on, close to almost 30 years since graduating.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, we may have, I'm a 94 graduate, and I'm not sure. I might have preceded you by a little bit, but we've been practicing here in the general vicinity for a long time. And I was excited to come back to Michigan, where I did a little bit of my undergraduate here in Ann Arbor, where I'm sitting this afternoon. And ended up coming back here because my wife had a family business in town. So Sibley Shoes, it was a large chain of independent shoe stores.
Oh,
So
I didn't
that's
know
what,
that.
yeah, yep, was the largest chain of independent shoe stores in the country for some
Awesome.
time, with about 30 or 40 locations. So we came back here kind of for her, but the Colorado State was kind of my dream school. Grew up in Vermont, and so it was a place that I certainly felt really comfortable going to. And I was a little bit strange in the sense that I ended up doing a joint MBA with my veterinary degree.
Like
And
side by side?
yes, so
Ooh,
yep.
that's a lot of work.
Once you're a professional student, I don't know. It was, it became actually a nice outlet. I mean, I love my veterinary people, but it was really fun, having a little diversion. And I think, most of us veterinary nerds tend to overstudy too much anyway. So just throwing another class or two into the mix was not, really didn't end up phasing me too much.
So why did you want to do an MBA? Like, were you always interested in business, or it was because your wife's
Um,
business, or why did you want to do that while you're in vet school?
it's a great question. I think for me, while I really liked veterinary medicine intellectually, my dad was in the medical field, and I kind of grew up a country boy. So I actually moved to Michigan in the middle of high school, and all my buddies wanted to go to medical school. And a
Wow.
lot of them came here to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and
Makes sense.
ended up getting weeded out in that first year or two. And so I had this momentum to, I guess, go to medical school, but I was like, I got to do something different than all my high school buddies.
So it was the desire to stand out a little bit, huh, and do something different.
um, well, I think what ended up actually getting me on the veterinary track, I know there's a heck of a lot of people that you get this question, did you always know you want to be a veterinarian?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I wasn't one of those that knew from day one. that that's what I wanted to do. I had this interest in medicine and sciences, and my freshman year at University of Michigan, I had a work-study program and worked in a medical research lab for
Mm.
Dr. Stanislaw Pasek. He was an
Oh,
exiled
wow. That's a name.
Yeah, he was an exiled cardiologist from Poland.
Wow.
And so, but he had been a kind of a big shot cardiologist and researcher. So he couldn't practice medicine at the time that I was working with him. He was doing strictly research. And my job was to be in charge of the research dogs. So I had this, in the back of my mind, it was like, oh, I'm got to find a way to rehome these these dogs. And so I ended up working with the lab animal veterinarians at University of Michigan, and they had they still do have a fabulous residency program and so on. And that's when Pfizer was here in town as well. So I just really got interested in veterinary medicine at that point. And so that's kind of the point in time that I really started focusing on it. And ultimately, going to veterinary school was something where when I really looked at it closely, there were a lot of people who were like, I thought I turned that phone off. There were a lot of people who were like, it doesn't make sense financially. And so I go back to that a lot of times when I do presentations and
You
stuff.
showed them, right?
Well, I mean, but that interest in the business part was really, how do we come up with business solutions for the profession?
Yeah.
Actually, an interesting thing that probably a lot of people don't know. If you were going to ask me, tell me something that
Yeah.
nobody knows about you, is I actually went to veterinary school for a year, and it was a time. And I had these great articles from Veterinary Economics back in the early 1990s about unhappy associates and the low salaries and so on. And I went for a year and then was like, I like this, but, I don't like the compensation part of it, just being, honest about it.
Right.
And so I actually went and I took a leave of absence, went and worked on Wall Street for a couple of years.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I had my marketing pitch to the Wall Street guys was about, bulls and beers. And so it ended up that I landed a really great job with a small Wall Street firm. And we ended up being the #1 money manager. We did both brokerage and money managing in 1987. When the market crashed.
Yeah, it was bad then, right?
Black Monday, yeah. And we were focused in cable and cellular phones. And so I had this great opportunity at that point to have a really good trading career and working for this top firm that was very small. And it just wasn't very gratifying, is the bottom line.
So you had this like idea that the veterinary medicine would be better than being on Wall Street.
Well, what I ended up doing is I saw a lot of young guys and ladies that at like 27 and 28 back in 1987 that were making like $200,000-300,000. I mean, lots of money.
A lot of money.
It was the roaring times.
Right.
And so, but a lot of those guys after the crash of the market ended up probably never, a lot of them lost their jobs and probably were never going to, make those types of dollars again. But it basically came down with this firm is, what do you want to do? And so I kind of walked away from it. I called up Colorado State and said, I think what I'd really like to do, I love veterinary medicine. But I think there's a lot of really good business opportunities and some solutions for the profession. And so they said, sure, come on back.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they were a very proactive school. So we had a tracking program. So they basically said, hey, if you don't want to do large animal, you don't want to do small animal, you don't need to do that. Go take a French class or a history class, diversify yourself, be different. Well, the business school was right across the street. And so I was able to join the program there and do a joint program. I actually graduated with my MBA in the December of '93 and my MBA in May of '94.
Oh, your MBA and then your DVM.
So yeah, I did them kind of contiguously. The interesting thing was, we always say, C equals DVM or C equals MD. Well, in the business school, you had to have a B average or better. And so, so the funny part of it is I had to do, better in veterinary school because of the business school part of it.
To keep your average up, huh?
Yes. But I really enjoyed that. And now I think a number of schools have joint MBA DVM programs, but I really like the support that Colorado State gave me. And the other great thing was at that time, you maxed out your tuition after like 16 credits. So I got my MBA for free.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, I don't think they do that now, but
today. No, that would not happen today. Wow.
So it was, it was kind of formative for me in terms of I really had this interest in what do we do, a little bit differently, in the profession. Some of it was, and I spent some time in veterinary hospitals. A lot of them were a little dysfunctional. So one goal was, how do we run hospitals so that the medical team can focus on medicine and that we can run it as a business and run it professionally. So that was a huge interest for me. And I also was very interested in multi-practice ownership and management, and saw a lot of solutions to some of the problems that I saw in the profession. And a lot of it was this compensation piece, which, I guess, we're not shy about saying that in the profession, but the reality is I think it keeps a lot of people, out of the profession.
Yeah, and we still haven't fixed it, right? In a lot of ways. I mean, it's a whole lot better, but it's still something we need to work on.
Yeah, so here's the my thesis for my MBA, and the dean was my mentor, and on my committee was really about the supply and demand of veterinary services. And he came in my presentations. I have a picture of Dean James Voss. He came in the first day of school and said, there'll always be room for another good vet. So when we came out of school, and I don't know, what year did you graduate?
From Michigan State in '88.
Okay. So I have a little gap there because I came and then I
went into business.
Did the business thing for a little bit. Yep. I also got into Colorado State. I think they took 2 out-of-state students, so I got in as an out-of-state student. And even then, it was like, I don't know, 20 plus thousand per year. So I said, hey, how about if I come out there for a year and work and gain in state? And they said, sure, you can do that. You'll have to reapply. But they said if you got in as an out-of-state student, you shouldn't have a problem getting in as an in-state student. Oh. So I rolled the dice and moved out there, had a really great time, had a job in the veterinary school and at a veterinary clinic, lived in an agriculture fraternity. And so had a really great year out there, reapplied, got in. And so, like I said, it's kind of a long and winding road.
Yeah, but it's fascinating because I think that, a lot of the veterinarians I talk to, they're really focused on just vet med. like I always had an interest in business, but I never, like in my wildest dreams, thought that I could do both at the same time until I got, started bought my practice and started to become a business owner. But it's just good to hear that that's a path that somebody that's really business focused can take, like you did. And you've really changed the profession a lot in our area and in all areas.
Um, I think with the idea of multi-practice ownership, that was kind of a, unusual interest at the time. One
Right.
of the reasons, ultimately, I loved veterinary school. I loved the business school. I think my fellow students thought I was a little bit odd, but I was just a little different.
Well,
But
sometimes it's good to be the odd guy, right? Like those
yeah,
are the people that really think differently.
um, but yeah, those were really fun years and a great school. But I ended up coming back to Michigan for two reasons. So I had lived here for part of high school. My dad was a professor and came to Wayne State University here in the Detroit area. So moved here from a small town in Vermont to kind of suburban Metro Detroit. Um, anyway, that being said, so we came back, one, because my wife wanted to go into her family business, but the other was, as you all know, one of the first real groups of hospitals was PVH, or professional veterinary hospitals. So I came back in particular to work with Andy Dorcas.
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah, I remember
who,
Andy.
yes, and so he was not like Mr. Popular in this area in particular. I mean, if you knew him, you loved him or hated him, but I came to, in particular, work with him and go into management, get some management experience with the group. About, within 3 months of joining them, they got bought out by a private equity firm, the Pet Practice, which you may
Mm,
recall.
okay.
And so all of a sudden, my, I guess, likelihood of going into management with them, was a little bit different because now they had this large, company that owned them. So really the history, I think, of, multi-practice ownership. I mean, I kind of looked at Andy as one of the fathers of group practice.
Was he kind of the first one that did like corporate veterinary
One
practice?
of the
Because he's the
first,
first one I remember.
yeah, I mean, I kind of call him the father of corporate medicine. That's not 100% true because actually, um, VCA started somewhere in the mid 80s. So, I mean, people were, certainly thinking of it. But he was, in terms of marketing, in some ways a marketing genius. I mean, from a business standpoint. And if
Hmm.
you talk to him later on in his life, his model would be very different, in terms of how he approached the profession. But he was a game changer, and so they ended up getting bought by, again, as the Pet Practice was a foster management out of Philadelphia. It was a private equity firm, and so I ended up seeing an ad in our local Southeastern Michigan VMA newsletter for Practice for Seal. And so you would remember, Ed Mapes and Elm Animal Hospital. And
Yep.
so for a $10,000 cash advance on off my credit card and $57,000 in student debt, I bought a practice 9 months out of school.
Wow.
Um,
That's pretty gutsy.
Other
Doesn't sound
than,
like very much money right now, though. It sounds like, oh, that was cheap. But
yeah,
at the
well,
time, that was probably scary, right?
that was just the down payment. I think
Right.
I might have paid one time's revenue for the practice, but anyway, it was a time when, um, veterinarians, it was not unusual to do a land contract.
Right.
that was pretty typical. And my deal with him, I started on April 15th of 1995. I remember that, for tax day. But my deal with him was, it was a $10,000 down payment. I think the practice was, I don't know, it might have been $300,000. I might have overpaid for it, but anyway, it was. I had, at the end of the year, if I wanted to walk away, I lost the deposit, and if I wanted to, move forward, then the practice was mine, and I started, my payments on it. But at the end of the year, so in the beginning of January, I had over $50,000 in the, bank account, because I took over total ownership and ran everything as my own. So my starting salary was $30,000, and I got a $2,500 bonus for my MBA. So $32,500 was my starting salary, and having $50,000 of, excess cash in the bank was like, this is a pretty good,
pretty good deal.
Good business. Yeah. And that was out in your neck of the woods, kind of the east side of Metro Detroit,
Right.
A different world from Ann Arbor. And my wife's like, that's almost an hour away. And it's like, it's perfect because it's going to force me to do multi-practice ownership. Because I'm going to buy.
So let me ask you this. So you had this practice, like, was it already multiple doctors, or was it just you?
It was myself, and then Ed Mapes stayed on with me.
So that allowed you to start to think about already getting another practice? So because you weren't working like in the practice full time, or how did that work?
I worked probably 3.5 days a week. I think I did 3 days, and every other Saturday.
Yeah.
A $300,000 practice. It was interesting because he had this, I still have it. He had a paper, like a piece of cardboard with each month of how the revenue was, like comparing for like 10 years. And so it wasn't, veterinarians, I think, were much more business people than, when you own your own business, you
have to be, right?
Yeah. And he was a good business person. He just didn't, he didn't enjoy clients. And so actually one of the things that he really taught me was to use the team, because he wanted to have as minimal time, client contact. He wanted to be out sailing his boat. And he walked away from the profession. He was a smart guy and a good surgeon, but he walked away pretty early on. I was probably 45. So it was really what I saw going on in the profession that, some people just found it, a challenging profession for various reasons. My interest in the multiple practice part of it was, I looked at it as a good business, but if you recall the Beatles song "Stuck Inside These Four Walls," never seen. I just thought of, wow, 20, 30, 40 years in these clinics, and a lot of them were pretty dated, as this one was. They were state of the art facilities.
Right.
It's a lot of years to work with 9 or 10 people. And so from a social aspect, I was like, I really wanted to get out and go to other practices and learn from, other practices. And I saw that as a huge advantage of group practice. So, we were both in the local management group here, Mom's Management Group. And so, yes, you could, because it was such an inclusive group, you could go to someone else's practice and you could learn procedures, or you could get some business ideas. But that's what I saw with a group of clinics, is that you would raise the bar, medicine wise, just because everybody shares best practices, or somebody's really good in surgery and somebody's really good in this. And so you had a team. And actually the PPAH, professional veterinary hospitals, I don't know if you knew a lot of their kind of it's almost like a faculty, but I mean, it was or almost like a fraternity or sorority. We were pretty bonded, the people that worked there, and it really
Well,
did.
didn't they kind of start as one of the, in our area anyway, didn't they kind of start the whole specialty kind of idea, like some specialists that just did orthopedics or, because back in the day we didn't have those kind of practices. Was PVH one of the first ones that kind of started that?
I think they,
If I remember
had their
something.
areas of expertise, but it really was my thing is that, we, as a profession, we basically, are on our own island. And so you hope that your medical standards are going to be, very high, but we really have had in the past very little oversight. And so I think it's really easy to do the same thing for 20 or 30 years and not necessarily pick up the latest and greatest. So when you have a group of 8 or 10 hospitals, I think it just forces you to, be up to speed
Yeah.
on what you're doing, and you bring in more new graduates and mentor them. So you just get a whole different spirit, I think, of that process. And so um, I like that, and I like the fact that it allowed people to grow. So now all of a sudden you have somebody that's maybe a manager of one hospital, and now you need, an area regional manager. So there were just, I mean, that's the other thing. And going back to that Beatles model of stuck inside these four walls, the career growth opportunities were pretty limited. You
With
might
single
rise with a
hospitals,
single
right?
hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just the things that always made me gravitate towards multi hospital groups. And I don't know, again, it might not have been the most popular thing in this area, but over time I did end up with 10 or 12 hospitals, got involved with owning some Banfield hospitals, and that was a really great education for me as well. I um, had the opportunity. So the founder of Banfield, Scott Campbell, um, we kind of hit it off, and he really wanted me to move out to Portland, Oregon, and go into management with them. And I said, we're kind of embedded here in Ann Arbor. I had 5 practices at the time, and my wife had little interest of moving.
Moving to Oregon.
Yeah. Um, Not a bad place to be. But anyway, I had the right to all the Banfield locations in Michigan is what we finally settled on, and ended up owning 3 locations. I was the only, because of my relationship with Scott Campbell, I was the only one that was allowed to, in the history of Banfield, to own both Banfields and independent practices.
Oh, so
Um,
that was something different.
that was really different. They didn't,
Mhm.
because for a while, Banfield franchised the practices so you could be a charter owner. Um,
Right.
and, opening one of those practices was not easy because as long as I've been in this area, there never seemed like there was an excess of veterinarians. I mean, now, it's noticeably different, but, at that time, to find someone, going back 20, 25 years ago, finding someone to open up a hospital for you on their own, in a corporate group setting was pretty darn difficult.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
uh, and so it's changed, obviously pretty dramatically.
yeah.
Um, so one thing talked about a little bit was, I mentioned with my MBA thesis was about supply and demand. And so
Yeah.
my,
Talk to me about that because that's happening now in a big way.
yeah, so my,
Our demand is so high.
yes. So the, my thesis and hypothesis was until we don't have an oversupply, because when I showed this slide of the first day of the dean coming in, and we were like aside from everything else, the joke in Fort Collins at school was you can make more, working in Burger King than you could as a veterinarian if you wanted to stay in Fort Collins.
Well, it's kind of that way now with some of the support staff, right? Like
Yeah.
that seems to be happening.
Yeah, but so anyway, I basically said, we have this oversupply, which is really bad because it's keeping our salaries, really low. I said until we flip that dynamic and have where there's more demand for veterinary services than there are veterinarians, there's a supply of veterinary services, compensation is not going to go up. And I was, again, I had a lot of friends that went to medical school. And so I always felt like I didn't want veterinary medicine to, be something where I was like, oh, well, I took a big pay cut from maybe having gone into human medicine. And maybe that was just a practical side to me. I actually went into a local pediatrician's office and a dental office and spent a couple of days with them, wrote some articles on how similar they are.
Yeah.
But pay was, like a third of, what they made. So I really, wanted, us to do better as a profession. And so that supply and demand curve was, to me, was part of the issue of too many veterinarians.
So what do you think? I mean, you've been working towards it, and now you co-founded Mission Veterinary Partners. What do you think we need to do? Like, because we still have this problem, right? We have a lot of demand from the public, and we don't have a lot of supply of veterinarians.
So
what do we do?
Yeah, so I have an article coming out. It might not be the most popular one, but it basically is the undersupply or the shortage of veterinarians and our veterinary team is a blessing in disguise for the profession.
Thing. Yeah. In a way, I agree with you in a way because of the fact that it's the only way that we have to pay more, right? That they're going to get more pay.
It's doing actually exactly kind of what I proposed would happen. And I have an example where at the time, if we had 50,000 veterinarians when I graduated, whatever, that were in small animal practice, and the revenue in the veterinary profession was $5 billion, we're locked into making $100,000, so to speak. But if we had 50,000 veterinarians and this pie of $10 billion of veterinary revenue, then you would make 200,000. And so that's really what is starting to happen now. It's very painful for the profession. It's really hard running a group like an MVP or obviously is solo an independent practice. But what is happening right now is you have two things. You have we have obviously just general inflation for cost of goods and running the business, and then we get a double whammy of wageflation. Right. So for veterinary practices, it's a challenging time to keep the same margins that you maybe have had in the past, which is a whole nother topic I love to talk about, understanding your bottom line. But yeah. the part, what is happening is veterinary salaries are going up pretty darn quickly. So, and the veterinary staff. So the average starting salaries now is about 120,000. And some places might be 140,000. And so,
right. And they're offering a lot of bonuses, signing bonuses and retention bonuses. And that's right. Something that individual practices never did.
Right. So you have to adjust for inflation and so on. Um, but and so the starting salary for medical doctor now is 200,000, and we're looking at 120, 140-ish for, veterinarians. It creates a lot of problems in some hospitals because you have an established veterinarian that maybe is making as much as a new grad.
Right.
um, One of the things that uh, groups like MVP, end up doing, and this was the other part for me, is mentoring, heavy duty mentoring. So we don't have a model, obviously, like in human medicine, where you go out and do these, 2 or 3 year, internship residency things. We do for the specialist, but not for your
Right.
general practitioner. So what we find is that if you put the time in and train a new graduate, they can, in essence, produce sometimes within the first year more than an established veterinarian. So if you learn the proper skills and the efficient ways to, whether it's your, time in the exam room, the confidence to charge appropriately, um, the proper surgical skills, so you learn the right ways to do things in a efficient manner. And so these salaries that seem high, especially if you're an independent employing a new
Practitioner,
graduate,
yeah.
They're earning their keep. And
Yeah.
so my bar still is, I look at a pediatrician or a dentist and say, hey, we're kind of done, there's some similarities there. It would be nice for veterinarians at least to, be compensated somewhere in that
So,
realm.
so what do you say to the veterinarian that says, yeah, we need to make more money, we need to be more efficient, we need to, just do vet med and let the team do the rest? What do you say to those people when the clients start pushing back on the prices? Because
Um,
that's, I think, what I hear a lot from my coaching clients. It's like, you know, I want to do this great medicine. I want to charge appropriately so I can make my pro sal or whatever.
yeah.
But the clients just don't see the value, or they don't have the money. Like there's some kind of difference between when you go to the dentist or the doctor and they charge a certain amount. Like, so
Yeah.
what do you say to those people?
So you're hitting on my uh, next favorite topic here.
Okay,
Um,
good. Let's go.
yes. I just was out in San Diego for the Fetch DVM conference and did a presentation on this. And so I'll keep it short, but, and it's kind of a weird, um, I guess, example, and people may not love it. But I have
We
a
have to be
slide.
a little
Yeah,
controversial, right? That's
yes,
part of the deal. When you're
especially at
talking
this
about
stage.
money, for sure.
Yeah. Um, and I'm going to say another huge advantage, and not everybody, you know, loves the corporatization of veterinary medicine. Um, but I can spout out a lot of good things that it does. But one of the things is they're not shy about, charging appropriately for services. And so just like the specialty practices for us were, gave us the confidence to charge more.
Right.
A well-managed group knows what they need to, charge to, be able to keep the doors open and
Yeah.
people paid. But going back to my controversial slide, is it's a monkey on the back of, so basically like we have a monkey on our back, and so we are, as a compassionate care that we want to deliver and the things you're talking about, we are basically artificially keeping prices low. So the veterinary community is subsidizing, um, the cost of care to keep it so that it can be as affordable as it can be.
Because we don't have because we don't have the guts to do it, because we're too
Well,
compassionate? Like, what do you think the
I
bottom,
think
what is
I
it?
think it's a blend. So I basically, in this tiered slide, it starts with compassionate care, makes us charge be low cost, and that's not like your traditional low cost veterinary clinic, but
Right.
we keep the cost down so that we find the sweet spot where we can get most of what we need done. The problem is, what is the appropriate fees? And that's a huge question. I've gotten over time, and people always ask, what should our prices be? And I give just this generalized definition. Our fees should be such, assuming we're running a somewhat efficient business, that our veterinary team is paid appropriately. So the doctors and the staff. And so human medicine, it seems ungodly that, how can we were just talking about, a dermatologist, ophthalmologist, they basically sign up for how many days a week do they want to work in human medicine.
And how
And
much
each
do they
one of,
want to make? And then they set
well,
the
each
prices.
day is $100,000, or now it's like $120,000, so they could work 3 days, and, they just kind of pick that out.
Right.
What we, so so their fees are based on that. So I think for us, we've kept things where, in a sense, I don't want to say we've babied our clients, but bottom line is, I'm a huge proponent of how do we help finance and budget care? So it's wellness plans and it's insurance. And I believe we're at this, I call it a cost of care threshold, where the prices are such that our clients basically, and they're smart enough, and it gets into generational, they need to take some responsibility and start budgeting out their care. And so that might be, okay, let us do a monthly subscription. So, you know what, I can't pay you $500 right now, but I can pay you $50 a month.
Right.
Also, I'm a big cyclist, so I give this analogy. It's not, if you're a bike rider, it's not if you're going to fall off your bike, it's when you're going to fall off your bike. And so,
Don't tell me that. I haven't fallen yet.
okay, I've got a broken collarbone right here for mine.
Oh no.
But anyway, so if you're a pet owner, your pet is going to have some
Yeah,
type of urgent
for
and
sure.
emergency care, and it's really expensive. So now you get a generation where the Gen X and Gen Z, they really, forever we've said, no, my pet's like a kid and I'll do whatever. But these guys exemplify it.
Sure.
And so they want the best care, and they will do almost anything for that. But they also don't have the deepest pockets. And so they're the perfect audience that will, I think, help us segue into pet insurance, which, if you look on the sidelines, there's about 30 different pet insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
We're only right now like 2.7% of pet owners have insurance, but it's gone up like 30% a year. I think we're going to turn that corner here over the next 3 to 5 years, where it's going to become much more popular. And
so as veterinarians, we should be pro insurance.
it's
think
the
that's going to
only,
be good for us?
I think it'll be wonderful. It's wonderful for the pet. We're not
Right.
going to get into, why. I think veterinarians got over the thing of, oh, I don't want it to be like how in human medicine, insurance is, kind of weird. I don't see us getting to that stage just because of the laws of how insurance is.
Right.
But the bottom line is, most of us don't have $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 when your pet, gets sick, and it might just be, some minor, it needs to be in the hospital for 3 days. Well, that's not an inexpensive stay.
Right.
And so I think that um, the prices really, I think, regardless of anything, are going to go up. And so I think we're just at that divide where budgetary, making it affordable by budgeting it out is going to be huge. And there's a lot of companies now. My um, cousin works for a big law firm here in Michigan, and they, every 2 weeks they take out 10 or 15 bucks from your paycheck if you want to participate in, pet insurance. And so
Yeah,
what
I think
they,
the
what,
corporations do too. Some of the
yeah,
veterinary corporations have that as a benefit.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that this is a great perk these companies can do for their, for their team members, workers. So they can go to, whether it's wellness plan or pet insurance or the combo, they can go and negotiate a 10 or 15% discount. And I mean, it's actually pretty, you know, inexpensive, for these policies. I think that one of the problems why it hasn't taken off so much in this country. Now in Europe, it's like, they've had pet insurance for well over 100 years. Lots of Europe, it's 50, 75%. They wouldn't think of not having pet insurance.
Right.
What happened in this country to some degree is that the media has has poo-pooed it in some ways, saying, well, oh my gosh, if you know saved your $50 a month, you might come out ahead. Well, the idea is, maybe your pet doesn't get sick, but we're gonna, what you're trying to do is basically pay it forward. And
Right.
so I
Right.
think the media has hurt us a lot in that aspect in terms of not promoting it. And but veterans, I think, have gotten over that fact. And what we found is it's a heck of a lot easier to market a wellness plan to your client than to sell them on, health insurance. But that's not our role. I think, you pick one or two policies and maybe have some information on it. But at the end of the day, our teams are a heck of a lot happier when, it may be a cystotomy, at your clinic, but if the, you obviously never want to put a pet down for something like that or put off that type of procedure. But, now that that client doesn't have to think about cost, we get those things done much quicker. But the other point I was going to mention that hurt the pet insurance is you need to get it when a pet is young, so at a puppy and
Right.
kitten
Right. I
age.
think a lot
So
of
I
people
think
don't
that's the
think
other
about
bad
that.
PR that it had gotten, is that, oh, you know what, my dog blew a cruciate and now I want insurance. Well, no, they're not going to be, allow you to, get insurance, after the fact.
Yeah.
So uh, I think that's a big factor, is start young. I mean, once your dog's got allergies and then you go to them, the insurance company.
And
So
it's too late,
they
right?
have to, the insurance companies have to be profitable too. And so I think working that dynamic. But anyway, so prices, I think, will need to go up to adjust. I mean, if you're, your individual, veterinary hospital, and you're all of a sudden, paying a new grad, amounts that seem, not doable, you're going to have to charge appropriately. And yes, so it's a emotional struggle, as you said, because we want to take care of that client. Well, how do you take care of them? Is, you know what, here's the, I can't keep my prices down forever. And I kind of say compassion fatigue is basically, killing us and the pets. So we
Yeah.
talk a
Just
lot
that
about,
fighting about those kind of things. And if we
yeah,
could
it just
solve that,
it sucks a lot of the joy out of it,
right.
and that's your burnout. But it also, what ends up happening, there's economic euthanasia, a popular term, but I talk about economic denial of care. So how many of our pets do we go on to option, B, C, and D? And, okay,
Because they
a
can't
lot of
afford
things
them.
might get, you know, better over time, but, are they getting the ideal care? So there's a lot of proper medicine that, we're not able to do. And as you said, that takes a lot out of, the veterinary team not being
Yeah.
able to do it. So,
So let me ask you this, and it's kind of a little bit of off this topic, but so when you're talking to the younger veterinarians that are just coming into the profession and they're, getting this $120,000 salary, but they still feel overworked and underappreciated. The same thing with the technicians. I think the technician salaries have definitely gone up, but I think they need to be far higher than they are. What do you tell these people from a standpoint of the future of the profession? Like, should we be optimistic? My focus is to keep them in vet med because it's been so good to me, and it's obviously been very good to you. But what would you tell them? Like, what should they think about in order to be optimistic and, that we have a future that's great in vet med?
yeah. I think it's, and having the chance to be on a few different, veterinary boards and so on, and talking about these issues, COVID has just created this, overworked mentality, and it's almost like a psyche. And, we joke about it, but, it's hard to find, and it's not just this profession, but most people, veterinarians, 30-35 hours a week is, enough,
Right.
feel burnt out,
Yeah, people don't want to
after
work
that.
50 hours a week like we used to, right?
Right. So,
And I don't blame
but
them because I don't want to either anymore. I don't do
right.
it anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think culturally we've changed and it's probably better work-life balance. But that's really hard, right? You've got large student debt. You've got, so you think, okay, whatever, your first 5 years, crush it and work, a heck of a lot more hours, but that's not really, what people want to hear. And so I think the future for the profession is bright because we are, obviously compensation is going up. I think there's, the mentoring and getting up to speed, I think is there. Obviously, it depends on the person and the practice, but I think, get better at getting people to be, better producers. You got to earn your keep one way. It is a
Proficient.
business,
Yeah, like
and
just
so
learning those skills on
right.
how to
So
speak to people and how to win clients' trust, and like that's all important, right?
yeah. So I think, look, the facilities are getting a lot nicer. The compensation is improving. Obviously, you're not working 50, 60 hours. So there's a lot of positives like that.
Right.
Then what ends up happening is that, and this is part of the drain of veterinarians too, is, so there's MVP, but there's a lot of groups, right? And so the career opportunities we provide for people allows, I think, less burnout, because maybe after 10 years, you want to do, like, you're into the leadership thing. So these opportunities in the organizations are pretty phenomenal, which you can get involved with. So you can get involved in mentoring, you can get involved in management. So there's a lot of new opportunities, and some of those are, just really good jobs. So when I look at some people that have worked with, myself, maybe 20, 25 years, some have gone from technician to really high level management positions where, they're making $200,000 plus,
Right,
so
yeah,
that wasn't happening for a technician before,
right. Yeah, so that's an
so I
advantage.
think there's a lot of different career opportunities within the profession now. So that, I think, is really healthy. The challenge, I think, too, just from a little bit on the financial side and how do you make things work, is for doctors like yourself, myself, when you own a practice, you had 3 kind of, income streams. You had your production as a doctor, you had the profit of the business, and if you owned your own real estate, ultimately that became, pretty valuable too. And so now you take, a doctor out of that, and you have to figure out a way, how do we, make them whole in a sense, just, practicing, medicine. And so it's, that is a challenge. But as I said, there's a lot of different opportunities within the career. And then also the ability in these bigger practices like to focus on, so 5-6 doctor practice doing multiple millions, now it's pretty conceivable you can produce $1 million a year in these type of clinics. And so we used to talk about the $500,000 doctor, or maybe the $250,000 revenue. So with good production, you can make a decent compensation just as being a doctor. But the other thing that you'll see with the groups is we are going to, again, supply and demand is good. We're going to have to partner with veterinarians to own hospitals. So
so you're talking like if somebody is young and they want to be an owner, rather than buying it themselves, they can partner with a corporation and have that ownership model, but with a backup.
Right. So skin in the game,
Right.
So we need to, there's an area that needs a new hospital. And, it's just kind of neat to see it. You find the leaders within, the practice, you provide leadership training. So you get some of your, people that basically are meant to lead and to run a practice. And so it's pretty easy to say, okay, go and build this practice for us. And a lot of times it's sweat equity. You can own 10 or 20, 25% of this and share the profits of it, and so on. So
yeah. So if owning your own place 100% is too scary, you can tiptoe in a little bit with the corporations.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of different.
I think that's a great opportunity for sure.
Yeah. So it's a changing dynamic. I think there's a lot of really great opportunities. I think the future is bright. There's a lot of pain points here that we're working through, but I think the power behind the groups, I think, is paving the way to create some new opportunities. You can talk about mid-level practitioners that I think we'll start seeing.
Yes, yeah, I think that's going to have to happen.
Yeah, so it is, it's difficult, but I'm also a fan of independent ownership, and you can do great with that too. So I think the more mentoring and support and also just the focus on the veterinarian's own health and wellness, those are all positive things. So I think it's going to be a good future. I think the other thing is, I think society, and this was a supply and demand thing, now we see how much clients value our services.
Yeah, so much, right?
Yeah,
like
so
they get angry when they can't get in, which is, we think is a terrible thing, but actually it's kind of good. It means they love us and they want to get in and they need to get in. And yeah,
right.
So that's interesting.
Yep. So those are all, definitely positive things. So I know we've got about an hour.
Yeah,
here,
we're going on an hour. So let's kind of try to wrap it up a little bit. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you're like, oh, I wish we would talk about this, that we could talk about briefly?
Yeah, but I'll probably
we covered a lot, and I have a ton of things I could still ask you, so we could always do this again.
Yeah, I would love to do a part two, because I feel in terms of a lot of the questions you had, but we got to go off on some different tangents. But
there's so much.
I think in terms of you start out, I think, asking about my background and how I kind of am where I am. So we talked a little bit of, got some of that story out there.
Right, but not all of it, for
But
sure.
there's, yeah, and hopefully, I wasn't on the soapbox too much, because like yourself, we get really passionate about these,
Well, we're both very
different
passionate about veterinary medicine, and that's cool. Like, we
Yeah,
both love that. We love the business of it, and we love the people in it. That's all really important.
yeah. So it's in transition, but I think it's in
Yeah.
it's in a healthy spot, and it's just really different than even 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think if people, um, whether it's newer comers to the profession, or independent practice owners, I think um, uh, tying that into this and how it can work for everybody is good, because I think yeah, people are a lot more accepting of corporate in one way or another, if we want to use that word. I like group practice, but I think it works well, I think, with the diversity. And so
Yeah.
I'm not, like, corporate's got to take over everything, and so on. I think there's a nice mix. And so I like to, talk about those opportunities as
Okay.
well.
Well, we'll schedule another time to get together, and we'll do another hour,
Okay, that'd
because
be
there's
great.
so many more things I could talk to you about. I've got gobs of questions, but I really do appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everything you're doing with Mission Veterinary Partners and trying to make the profession better. And I want to hear about that too. So, because I know quite a bit about that group, but I don't know everything. So I'd love to hear more about that. So if you
Great.
agree to come back, we'll set something up.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you virtually.
Yeah, it's
And
fun.
yeah, and it's fun, obviously, because we share a lot of background together. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, we've known
been a
each other a lot of years, right?
yeah, so it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been
Getting
great.
to
This is Dr. Jeff Rothstein, and he is part of Mission Veterinary Partners, and he's an author, and he's got articles all over the place in veterinary economics and all the things. So if you want to check out more, can they look you up on like LinkedIn, or go to the Mission website, or how can people find
yeah,
out more?
uh, I will send you. I mean, email address
Okay,
is
well, you
great,
can
so I
hook
can
me up
send
with
you.
that later, and
Yeah, I'll send you the
I'll put it in the
contact.
show notes.
Okay, that'll be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, and then we'll talk again.
Okay, thanks so much for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and
Everybody
yes,
have a beautiful week in vet med. Bye.
okay, thanks for what you're doing, Julie.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being
Appreciate it.
here.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.